Welcome everyone to our first post-election meeting, and congratulations to those who offered to serve our community and those who are in new positions and those who we appreciate just being there for us. So thank you for that. We are going to have a great program today. It is the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan. And we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Emily Morgenstern will offer our reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our moment of literacy is from Paulo Freire, one of my heroes. And he says, literacy is an active phenomenon. Its power lies not in the perceived ability to read and write, but rather in an individual's capacity to put those skills to work in shaping the course of his or her life.
So it's November, so holiday. I'm sorry, I forgot I'm taller than Jane.
Everyone's
Holiday season is coming up, so these next 2 months can be really fun and exciting, but also can be really stressful, and we can be, trying to finish work projects, family gatherings, travel, all that stuff. So I just want us to think about for the next 2 months to be able to take that time, slow down, and really appreciate what we have in our lives and don't dwell on the things that we don't. So focusing on literacy, I have a poem I would like to read. Go gently today, don't hurry, or think about the next thing. Walk with the quiet trees. Can you believe how brave they are, how kind? Model your life after theirs. Blow kisses at yourself in the mirror, especially when you think you've messed up. Forgive yourself for not meeting your unreasonable expectations. You are human, not God. Don't be so arrogant. Praise fresh air, clean water, good dogs. Spin something from joy. Open a window, even if it's cold outside. Sit, close your eyes, breathe. Allow the river of it all to pulse through eyelashes, fingertips, bare toes. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe until you feel your bigness, until the sun rises in your veins. Breathe until you stop needing anything to be different.
No, that is wonderful. Thank you. And enjoy your lunch. We will reconvene in about 10 minutes. We are ready to reconvene. And we're going to reconvene by introducing our guests. And so those who have guests, Myra, Diana Fletcher, Eric, Heidi Seitzema, Claire Booth Root. I think we've got them all. Come on up and so we can meet your guest. Have her already. I know.
I'm Heidi Seitzma, and today I have with me again my colleague Janelle Mayer. She is the Vice President of Community Investment for the Community Foundation for Muskegon County and has been with the foundation for 12 years now, I think, and she's here to hear about the housing program.
I'm very, excuse me. And focus here. Very pleased to introduce the club to Jeffrey Cave. Jeff is the Chief Operating Officer for Orthopedic Associates here in town. He's a Reese Puffer grad and a Ferris grad. He's been an adjunct professor at Grand Valley in Ferris. Currently lives in Unica. Prospective member.
Good afternoon. Welcome, my guest, Dorico Scott, who is the program manager for HGA Support Services. He oversees all of our Muskegon and Oceana homes. He's also a service member, so thank him for his service this week.
Hi, I'm Claire Root Benson, and I have with me two senior ladies from Muskegon High School, newly involved with the Rotary Interact Club there, Brielle Dean and Dayanara Perez.
And now we move on to the program part, and I will hand that over to Lisa Tyler.
I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, Liz Keegan, and I've gotten to know each other because the Fair Housing Center does wonderful, wonderful work in our region, but they also get some funding through the Muskegon County Senior Millage. So I'll get a shameless plug in for that. So we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years for that, and I'm very excited to hear her presentation. Liz has been the Director of Education and Outreach for the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan since January of 2006. She's responsible for developing and implementing education and outreach activities for the general public, social service organizations, the housing industry, and beyond. She's provided extensive technical fair housing training to more than 10,500 housing industry members in over 425 sessions covering lending, rental property management, property maintenance, advertising, real estate sales, and advanced topics upon request. So I'm sure lots of you are going to want to learn more about her and the great work that they do. I know you are going to learn a lot. Liz.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate the invitation to join, and I really appreciate all of Mike's assistance in making sure that my tech is working. I was working solo on a 2-hour class with tech by myself on Monday, and it was very challenging. So this is just a phenomenal opportunity and setup. So thank you very much for that. I do love questions, so feel free to take advantage of our time after I provide some basic fair housing information. I brought a lot of information that I'd like to share, so I'm going to move fairly quickly. We have a lot to talk about, so with that, I'd like to get started. So we are a private nonprofit. We were founded in the greater Grand Rapids area with a group of citizens, real estate agents, and educators really thinking about the lack of integration in schools. And that really led to a conversation of how busing is a daytime solution, but people would go home at the end of the day, of course, to segregated neighborhoods. So they wanted to look at integrating housing as a way to integrate schools. And that's how Fair Housing came to West Michigan. The Detroit Fair Housing Center essentially let us adopt most of their practices and policies and trained the group to get started. So our mission is very straightforward. We want to prevent housing discrimination from ever occurring whenever possible. And so we do work both with the housing industry and with community members who are looking for housing. And of course, we couldn't do it without partners like Lisa and all the other agencies funded by the Muskegon County Senior Millage, and also the local governments who do work with us and fund us to do fair housing here in Muskegon. The benefit of all of these partnerships is that hopefully fair housing violations get identified and brought to us. So you didn't know this before you got here today, but you are part of now our ears on the ground of helping us identify fair housing issues and housing barriers. And I know this is a very timely and sometimes hot topic here in Muskegon. And so again, I appreciate the time. So I don't want to assume everyone knows what fair housing is, especially because right now, to most people, the housing market feels unfair, right? It's expensive. There's not a lot available. Things move very quickly. You feel like you just don't have a chance. And we get a lot of phone calls about that, and I certainly understand. We are tied to federal, state, and local fair housing laws, though, that really are designed to address housing discrimination based on protected classes. So different groups of people that have been specifically identified in order to hopefully help establish more of an opportunity for them to access housing that they qualify for, but without the barrier of experiencing housing discrimination. So we do all kinds of education. I'm a department of 2 people now, which is very exciting. Fellow nonprofiters in the room, feeling me on that? Yeah, yeah. I also throw events and fundraise and grant writing, whatever else. We also accept allegations of housing discrimination, and we do get complaints from members of the industry, as well as people who have experienced housing discrimination directly, and advocates who just feel like something is off. So our relationships are really key to our mission. We can investigate complaints of housing discrimination, but we are not an enforcement authority. We are a nonprofit. And I think that allows us to be kind of in that middle space of advocacy. So we don't have attorneys on staff either, so we can't provide legal advice, but we can provide services that are free to almost everybody that we work with, especially people that are reporting housing discrimination. And they really lead that process. I also want to say, discrimination can be reported anonymously. People can contact me and just say, hey, I heard this, or I witnessed this, or I was in the car when this agent said this, or I was in the bank when I heard about this. And that is an incredible tool for us to really meaningfully address housing discrimination, because we're not in those rooms or in that car at that time. We can't be there. We have 9 people covering a minimum of 12 counties. But we actually cover about 2/3 of the state of Michigan. So this is why I'm recruiting you all. I need your help, right? So what we are looking for is essentially differences in treatment based on any of the protected classes, which I'll kind of go through in a little more detail, but differences in treatment based on race or religion or gender or age, whether or not somebody has children. Sometimes they're given different information. Sometimes they're given different treatment. It's often done in what we call a polite discrimination way. So people are treated in a way that feels appropriate, feels fair, but on the back end, the access to housing is just not there. So that can be very challenging to identify. It's also all about access to home ownership, the American dream, the ability to build equity and set up your future generations of family for success. That's a huge issue right now. We're also seeing discriminatory appraisal stories in the news. That's a national trend in the media, which is encouraging to see those stories. But it's something that Black and brown communities have known about and talked about for decades. It's not news there. But I'm appreciative of the news coverage and the public conversations going on about those issues. We can also see ads that are discriminatory, policies that are discriminatory, and even some of the behaviors that we see can sometimes be pretty bad. We've also started to see a lot of obvious discrimination where people will say or do things that are pretty clear. They make their intentions known. Sometimes they put it in an email or in a text message or a voicemail. And again, not an attorney, but what that provides to us is evidence. So what are our protected classes? We have race, skin color, national origin, meaning where somebody is from, their gender, which now since 2021 includes gender identity and sexual orientation. A lot of people thought that was a protected area for years and years and years. It only officially was added for the private market in February of 2021. So that is a big step forward in protection for that population. Religion, disability status, physical or mental disability, and familial status means somebody under the age of 18 is living there. Could be grandparents raising grandchildren, could be single parent with child, somebody fostering children, adopting children. It's really broadly defined. Here in Michigan, we have more protections that prohibit discrimination against somebody based on whether or not they're married. And as I mentioned, we do have age protections, but there is a carve out for senior communities. So they have some ability to discriminate based on age that I'll talk about in a moment. Locally though, we don't have a ton of additional protections. Muskegon Heights right now has height and weight as additional protected classes. And generally that's because we have employment, education, public accommodations, and housing kind of lumped into local civil rights ordinances, but it's on the books. So I want to make sure to tell you all about it. There's very little housing in Michigan that's not going to be covered by some sort of fair housing law or civil rights law, including empty lots that are intended for housing. So you'll see on the list things that you might have expected to see: apartments, houses or condos. A lot of condo associations and homeowners associations don't even know what fair housing is. So happy to provide education and information there if you know a group that could benefit from that. Cooperatives, colleges, dorms, financial institutions, banks, lenders, mortgage companies, real estate agents, they're more likely to know about fair housing law because they're required to get that training. Rental property owners and managers are not required to get fair housing training. Thankfully, we do get a lot of people in that industry interested in fair housing training and best practices, so we do engage with them, but it's not required. So a lot of the discrimination that we see is unintentional because they can legitimately say, I've not known about this, I didn't know better. So we do see a lot of rental complaints as well. But mobile home communities, manufactured housing, all kinds of things can be covered, as well as really any housing professional or lending professional. So as I mentioned, senior housing is something that we've been working on, and I'm super pleased to be a part of the efforts funded by the Muskegon County Senior Millage. It is an incredible group of advocates who offer a ton of resources and services. It's so fun to be involved. I just love it. So don't get to say that too often, to say, you know, we've got resources specifically for people looking to live in Muskegon County or already here, 60 and older. So huge set of resources there. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. But housing for older adults can set minimums of 55 and older or 62 and older. But any other age restriction is likely going to be a violation of state law. So they also have to be in business to house seniors. So sometimes we'll find condos or HOAs that are 48 and older. Oh, that's not senior housing. I'm not there yet. Give me a minute, right? So any of those sorts of things are worth further investigation. And we can often lead with education because, again, as I said, a lot of these groups don't have to know fair housing and they don't know fair housing. So I wanted to kind of review some of the examples a little bit more in detail here. So any sort of housing transaction that gets delayed or is completely stopped because of a protected class is potentially a fair housing issue. It always goes back to who? People in housing is generally going to be fair housing. So a refusal to rent or sell or convey an offer, otherwise make some sort of housing opportunity unavailable. Discrimination in terms, conditions, and privileges. So anytime, you know, financial amounts change, if it's because of who is seeking the housing, that bears further investigation. We see discriminatory advertisements too. People will say, pets okay, no kids. You know, just like that. Or no housing choice vouchers allowed. And in some cities, that's an action that's considered a violation of a local ordinance. Also seeing pictures, human models. A lot of senior communities will only show white residents. And there's a lot more diversity in our communities and they're required to show that diversity. Falsely representing housing is unavailable is a big issue. So is steering. That's kind of an older behavior, I think, that people think was resolved by civil rights laws. But we do find that people are told, you know what, you'll be more comfortable in this neighborhood, or you know what, there's more people like you here. And sometimes it can even be done with the idea that you're being helpful, you know, that you want this person to be comfortable, but that perpetuates different types of segregation. So we want to challenge that. We should be able to live wherever we choose to live. And I think even though I've been in fair housing for 20 years, I have a better understanding of the importance of where I live after being ordered to stay home, right? I was so grateful. And I had a lot of recalculations in my mind of what I have and maybe what I don't have. But right now we do know that where we live dictates how we live. It even dictates how long we live, what kind of health care we get. They can tell you your dental health by your zip code. It's wild. It's good information to know. It equips us hopefully to think about equal housing opportunity. We'll see housing providers requiring people to have jobs. You know, there's a lot of legal income that doesn't come from employment. So we want to raise that. We see a lot of criminal background bans or policies. This is a really emerging area where we're starting to see better understanding that screening someone for criminal backgrounds of certain types doesn't actually tell you whether somebody's going to be a good tenant or neighbor. So we're seeing some changes there. Really targeting families with kids. And I'm from the east side. And all I heard about West Michigan is what an amazing place it is to raise a family. People would leave and come back and have a family, right? And it is. But sometimes families aren't treated very well here. So we got to be aware of that. Putting people in different buildings. We had one housing provider who put all the women in one building, all the men in the other, families with kids over here. Wouldn't let unmarried couples live together, to the point where the person who brought it to our attention was actually a law school intern working with us. She bought fake wedding photos at Target. You know, the empty frames that have kind of those prints. She just kind of put those up there, and she was engaged to get married. Her fiance would visit, but she felt ashamed and kind of had to present this facet about herself that wasn't true to herself. And the defense of that landlord was, well, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And we're like, well, time for a change. We're gonna work with you on this. Another unfortunate trend that really got exacerbated by the pandemic is sexual harassment in housing. And if anyone is ever sharing with you that any sort of untoward behavior or pressure to have an unwanted sexual relationship is happening tied to their housing, please send them to us. This is our refuge. You go home and you let it all, right? This is where we go to breathe. I loved the intro pieces, the quote and the pieces that were read, because I thought that's where home is for me. That's where I can let go. And we need that refuge, and we should be able to rely on that being a safe place for us. So I also just want to briefly highlight some of the technical pieces. Housing discrimination that happened a while ago can still be addressed. Within the last 3 years, there may be something that we can be able to do to help people exercise their fair housing rights. Most of our complaints are filed administratively. So it's a paperwork process with a government agency, either HUD at the federal level or the Department of Civil Rights at the state level. But people can choose to use the courts. They can choose to mediate. They can choose to have us call and say, did you know you can't do this? We really work with our clients. Anything that will further fair housing at the end of the day is what we're willing to try to do. The trends for our cases has been fascinating to see. You might be surprised to see that top group and that top number up there. Disability status has been the #1 basis of discrimination in West Michigan since 2015. Between 2007 and 2014, we had a different group. Do you remember what was happening in those years? A lot of people lost their homes to foreclosure. So families with kids was the #1 basis from 2007 to 2014. Prior to that, from when we opened in 1980, race was always our highest volume of complaint. And I think when we investigate, we still see a lot of race-based discrimination, but it's harder to uncover and identify. But I do want to talk about protections for people with disabilities, because there's some extra protections and things that we can do to help people maintain their housing. We also see a lot of rental discrimination in the rental process, more than half of our caseload here. But if you quickly kind of scan down the list, you can see that zoning discrimination can happen. Buildings can be designed and constructed in a way that violates fair housing and disability rights law. Insurance can be offered on a discriminatory basis. So really, there's no part of the housing transaction that probably doesn't have some sort of fair housing right or responsibility attached to it. But that red slice of the pie is called reasonable accommodation. That's where people need to change their services or policies for people with disabilities. And that takes up a lot of our time, as you can tell. I also want to drill down just a little bit to the 3 cities here, as we do have a contract working with the local governments in Muskegon Heights, and Norton Shores. And it follows the similar pattern. Disability status is our #1 basis, followed by discrimination based on race, and then families with children. So I do also want to share what disability-based discrimination can look like. It's anyone legally who has a physical or mental impairment that impacts how they go about their day-to-day life, how they walk, bathe, breathe, eat, hear, see, drive, go to work, conduct their social lives. That is legally considered someone with a disability. Also, if you're assumed to have a disability or you have a history of having a disability, it's a really big protection. And I think that's also why we see a lot of violations, is sometimes people don't know how to work with people with disabilities. So we're really trying to tackle that. So modifications are something that I think most of us would be familiar with. If my vertical gets worse, I need some changes in the bathroom, maybe some grab bars put in the shower and by the sink and toilet. Maybe I need a handrail at the front door, things that you can reach out and touch, ramps, things like that. Those are called modifications. And generally they are welcomed for the most part, but occasionally we'll see HOAs or condos say, you know what, if we do that, it's going to look like people with disabilities live here. Well, they do. They're everywhere. We are everywhere. Or it won't look nice, or we'll have to do it for everybody. Those are not valid excuses. So we can help advocate for these sorts of changes to make sure that people can be safe, stay where they are, age in place. This is a big conversation. A lot of baby boomers and people turning 65, like 10,000 people a day. And we're all starting to think like, where am I going to live? What can I afford? What do I need? Where do I want to be? Big conversations. So all kinds of things can be changed about housing to allow for that aging in place or for people to stay where they are. The other fear is a lot of people don't have somewhere else to go. You know, if they lose this current apartment, people are terrified they're going to be homeless, and that's a fair fear. So on the accommodation side, how many of you have heard of emotional support animals? Like the giraffe, the peacock, the pig, the crocodile? Spent a lot, squirrel, yep. Boa constrictors, bearded dragons. I could keep you here all day, but I'm not going to. We can help with assistance animal requests from either side. It's a meaningful tool supported by a healthcare professional for someone with a disability, but it's a hot topic. Another example though is, you know, if somebody needs an assigned parking spot set aside uniquely for their use. That's an easy one to talk about and make a request for. Sometimes people need somebody to move in to take care of them. So these are all kind of things that we can help both parties figure out what is reasonable in order to meet the needs of somebody with a disability living somewhere. So possible signs of discrimination in this area is just refusing to engage in the conversation or ignoring a request for these types of changes. We've had clients go without bathing or being able to cook a hot meal for years. We just, in Michigan, not our center, but another center, found a gentleman who had been told they couldn't put in a barrier-free shower for him. So he was literally throwing himself over a cement wall. Then the tub wall was right next to it. He kind of like tossed himself into the bath every time he wanted to shower for 4 years. So it made his initial condition much worse and he got new injuries. The landlord said it'll cause structural damage to remove that bathtub wall. That wasn't true. So it can be a dramatic change in quality of life to have some of these small changes made. We also see people asking for a lot of medical information or private health information. That's not necessary. We again can help navigate something like that. For older adult housing, we see people separated by age or ability or kind of screening people out, like you're not healthy enough to live here, or you know what, we want to see you in person before we're going to let you move in. Those are all possible signs of discrimination. These are things that should be done in partnership together. And again, our services are free to help either a housing provider or somebody making these requests or a family member. If you're helping someone, we can certainly help with that. So we're here to help. I think I'm doing all right on time in terms of questions, and I hope you do have some, but I'm planning to stay too. So if you have something you want to talk to me about privately, feel free.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I'm just curious about, do you get a lot of pushback? Like you mentioned, people that have been renting houses for 30 plus years, and do you get a lot of resistance?
We can, absolutely. We like to lead with education and try to just fix the situation if our client is open to that. Sometimes in one case, we had a client who was an attorney and her husband was a wheelchair user, and she contacted us and said, I'm taking this to federal court, but would like to know the history of what this housing provider and lender has done in the past. And we were able to provide that. So, you know, our client can lead. And most of the time, I'd like to say most of the time, we're pretty successful in saying, hey, can we work with you to change this? But sometimes people are absolutely my house, my business. You know, you can't tell me what to do. But if there's an exchange of rent for housing, these laws apply. So, so we're willing to really try any approach that we can think of at the end of the day to keep fair housing in our communities. But yeah, we've absolutely met resistance. Yeah, it's a great question.
That was a very clear and excellent presentation. Thank you. I wonder, you mentioned that you're in many parts of Michigan. What counties?
So essentially, if you draw a line from kind of Grand Rapids over to Holland, because Holland sits on the Allegan and Ottawa border, we kind of dip down into northern Allegan. But we go all the way up through Traverse and up through the UP. There is another fair housing center that'll do some casework towards Lansing and east of 127, but they don't do any education like I do. So that's where I kind of do the education for a lot of the state. So also, if there's any groups you would like me to talk to, please let me know. I'd love to be connected to more groups here. And I promise I can be brief. I won't put you through the 2-hour class I did yesterday.
Airbnbs have been an issue in this side of the state because of the lakes and so forth. And I know that some of them limit the number of people and the activities that can go on when
Yeah.
a group rents an Airbnb. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. Short-term rentals are something we do keep a close eye on. Other civil rights laws are going to apply to short-term rentals if they are only available on a basis that would opt them out of fair housing laws. So fair housing laws cover what we call dwellings, which have a legal definition. So if they're offering a longer-term rental, a month or the whole summer or longer than that, there's an argument to be made that this is somebody's home now, their dwelling. So it can really be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, but we're very aware of the tension of the preference for short-term rentals. You lose the year-round housing, you lose workforce housing, you lose housing for people that are looking to buy their first starter home. So it's a bit of a both. We're watching the housing availability, but also from a civil rights perspective, they've been found, both owners and the platform itself, to have violated civil rights in the past. So it's a very timely question. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So it depends. One of my judges that I'm frequently on a panel with, that's his favorite answer, and I'm going to borrow it for today. So it depends. It depends on what sort of pattern they have for leasing that property out. Generally, it's going to be more of a vacation or short-term stay, so it won't be covered by fair housing. But they can't then also discriminate. Other laws come into play.
Thank you, Liz. You really appreciate
Thank you.
that. And Liz, we will be making a contribution in your name to the Malala Fund as a thank you gift for speaking to us. Malala Fund promotes literacy with girls that don't have a chance otherwise. Thank you. Okay. And, birthday time. We have quite a few birthdays to celebrate today. Maggie Kyle, she's gonna start me with this one. Maggie Kawakowski has a November 9th birthday. Drew Moss has a November 9th birthday, along with David Ramos. On the 11th, we'll celebrate Rich Kramer and Mike Vogus. And Chris Colley has a birthday on the 12th of November. Horea Nuragos on November 16th, as well as Patricia Wallstra. Are any of our birthday people here? Mike is here. We should have had this better orchestrated, but he didn't bring the accompaniment with him. So here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. And now it's time for our member spotlight, which is a really nice time of the meeting that we get to meet one of our members up close and personal. We focus on what he does when he's not here, what his vocational aims are, and just getting to know you a little bit better. And today's spotlight will be Troy Wasserman.
My name is Troy Wasserman. I was actually talked into joining Rotary from Jason Piasecki and my brother-in-law Gary Nealand as well. I'm married to my wife Carly, and I have 2 children. My son Bobby just started at Northern Michigan University as a freshman, and my daughter is a junior at Mona Shores High School. And I have a lot of hobbies. I love to hunt, I love to fish, I ski, hike, tennis. I co-own Wasserman's Floral and Gift Shop with my sister Angie. We are the oldest business in Muskegon. We're celebrating our 142nd year in business this year. It was started by our great-great-grandparents back in 1880. And I also am a commercial real estate agent at Core Realty Partners in downtown Muskegon. Well, Wasserman's Floral Gift Shop started in 1880 by Angie and I's great-great-grandparents who were immigrants from Germany. We've definitely changed at our fair share, and I'm sure each owner did. When it was purchased from my dad, it will be 10 years ago that Angie and I bought it. We kind of rebranded everything, redid the whole inside of the store, the outside of the store, new logos, new vans, and just kind of grew it beyond where it was at. And we have some amazing customers that are big parts of the community as well, and we love to please them. And I think Rotary is a huge asset to the community. They're involved in a lot of great things in this town and a lot of towns. I mean, people come from other Rotaries here and always have huge remarks about how well attended and how much stuff that our Rotary has accomplished. And it's pretty neat to be a part of that for sure.
And now we have the great opportunity to induct one new member. So would Rob Taylor and Karen Calkins come up?
My pleasure. Son, hello. It's my pleasure to introduce Karen Calkins as a prospective new member here shortly. And Karen is a Muskegon native who moved around Michigan as a child, ultimately graduating in Whitehall. His wife Sally is a graduate of Mona Shores, and they met at MCC, where they were married in the courtyard in 1987 after earning their associate's degrees. Their 21-year-old son, Jacob, is currently a student at MCC, where he will be the 3rd Calkins generation to earn his first degree at MCC. Karam continued his education at MSU, where he earned his bachelor's degree in biology, physical science, and secondary education. After becoming a science teacher in the Detroit area, he earned his master's degree in biology from MSU. He completed his education with an educational specialist degree from Oakland University and a K-12 special education certificate from Madonna University. He taught a variety of science courses from 6th to 12th grade and was also an administrator and school accreditation chairman for many years. During his teaching career, Karam monitored students in many clubs and assisted several scouts with their Eagle Scout projects at his school. He was fortunate to create nature trails at 2 middle schools, the most recent of which was in Livonia, where he received support from the local Rotary Club. A licensed residence builder since 1996, Karam still likes to build things, but tends to focus most of his efforts on his own homes and those of friends. He hopes to use some of his construction skills on the Rotary Interact trip to El Salvador in 2023. Karam began his service to the community when he joined the Army in 1983. His military career ended at the end of Desert Storm in 1991, but he continued his service as part of his local neighborhood board then as the Water Quality Director for his Lake Board, and most recently as an elected member of the Roosevelt Park City Council. He looks forward to many years of service as a member of the Rotary Club.
Fellow Rotarians, it is the duty of our Rotary Club to add new members from time to time so that we may not only increase our usefulness and influence as a club, but also to extend the spirit of Rotary throughout the community. Today, we welcome into our ranks and admit the membership of Karen Calkins. Karen, you have been elected to membership in this club because of your fellow members believe you to be a worthy representative of your calling and also possess qualities that will permit you to exemplify the true spirit of Rotary in your public, business, and social and private life. We wish to impress upon you that you have been admitted not only to the Rotary Club of Muskegon, but to a worldwide association. And by virtue of your membership in this club, you will be welcomed into the fellowship of any Rotary Club in the world. The honor and privilege of Rotary membership carries with it duties and obligations. You will be expected to attend club meetings regularly, to perform your share of club service, and to place your knowledge and talents at the disposal of the club in its task of carrying out the principles of Rotary into the daily life of the community. I ask all Rotarians to stand and welcome Rotarian Calkins. In the name of the Rotary Club of Muskegon, I formally admit you to membership in this club and affix to your label our emblem. Fellow Rotarians, I commend you to our newest member, Rotarian Karen Calkins. More stuff. I know it is. Okay, and now we have poetic license. It is getting a little rough.
I will try not to take out the mic this time. Okay. Today for our Brave Rotarian contest, I am ably assisted by Christy Nagenguest, our treasurer. I thought she would be a great choice for today to remind everyone to get your checks in to be fair to all concerned. So thank you for that. So we have here a selection of poetic forms and poetic devices. Thank you. And Christy, if you would select one and hand it off. Okay. And who do we say goodbye to which poet laureate is leaving our corner? Oh, so I can take that. Thank you. So alliteration is the repetition of the same letter sound across the start of several words in a line of text. The word comes from the Latin littera, meaning letter of the alphabet. The current definition of alliteration has been used since the 1650s, so I think we can say it's established. You will have let's see, this one is from Romeo and Juliet. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, you know, it's a lot of F's. So but here is a sample of a poem using alliteration. It's by Maya Angelou. It's called Caged Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped, his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. It goes on, but I won't. And next one. Ballad. Oh, ballad. And we're saying goodbye to which poet among us? Oh, Pam. Pam, we will miss your participation in our poetry corner. Thank you for that. Let's see, number 17. So hold on here. What is a ballad? Ballads are a form of narrative verse that can be either poetic or musical. Not all ballads are songs. Many ballads tell stories, but this is not a mandatory attribute of the form. Let's see, a ballad with lyrics traditionally follows a pattern of rhymed quatrains. Okay, and then we're getting down into the weeds, but you get it. So the poetic weeds, I don't know what that is, the garden of verse, I guess. So anyway, a famous ballad that you might all remember from high school is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And this is about the wedding guests. It starts with, it is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of three by the long gray beard and glittering eye. Nowhere stoppeth thou's me. The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set. Mayst hear the merry din? Anyway, it goes on, and the famous line from this is water, water everywhere, and then not a drop to drink. So thank you to our poets that are leaving our poetry corner, and look forward to having more of people exit next week. Sorry. Thank you, Christy.
We don't want to have people exit next week. We want you to come, but you might not be able to come as a poet. But speaking of coming to the meetings, that's a good segue into the announcements. You may have noticed the last few weeks that we get an email that says, oh, we've got 100 people signed up for this meeting. And let us be clear that if we get 110 or 120 or up to 300 reservations, we will accommodate that. It's just that there's some kind of breaking points that when you get more than 100, then we have to set extra seats and maybe get extra staff and definitely extra cookies, because people get grouchy if you don't have enough cookies. So please just feel free to, don't get scared by that 100 mark. Just come sign up, just following our new rules. Sign up by end of Monday, end of business on Monday, and come everybody, because you want to see who gets kicked out of the Poet Laureate Club. That's suspenseful. Oh, and we have some other announcements that a particular person in this group decided I should announce, and looking at me, wrote it in 25-30 point print. So that's an accommodation for old people, I guess. But this one is for our fellow Roturkians. And it's a thank you for your food donations. Next week will be the last collection to support the North Muskegon School internet classes. So thanks for bringing your canned goods and shelf-safe foods, and they will be going to a wonderful purpose with our middle school kids. I have another one, which is a fun announcement, and that is to a thank you for all you do for everything, school uniforms for El Salvador, Honduras, children's books, and pop cans for the internet. We appreciate your Rotary spirit. Who do you think this is for? Darlene. Thank you, Darlene Collet. And now we are going on to the raffle. Yes. Seven, six, one. Over here, Mark. Becko. Six, oh, so close. Okay. All right. 3 happy Rotarians. Excellent. Next week, our program will be from the United Way. Remind you tonight, those people who signed up for the Rotary dinner, we'll see you over at the Sin. And that concludes our business. So we will end with the 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?